want to thank you guys all for being here. We appreciate you taking your Saturday afternoon to come see our candidates and see what they got to say to us. I'm going to introduce you to Jeff, and he's going to lead us on our way.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm Jeff Thomas. I'm with SURJ, showing up for racial justice, and we want to thank you very much for being in this space with us here today. And please join me for a special blessing from Taylor Burtail, who will begin our event. Taylor?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Afternoon. Sorry, I just woke up. I've been stuck in a book series, so I was up until 2 this morning reading, so excuse me. So I was asked to start us off in a good way, to give gratitude to the land and communities that make it possible for us to live the lives that we do now. In my tradition, I would give a blessing to thank Creator for allowing us to convene in gratitude and in good spirit. So this afternoon, I would ask each of you to give thanks to the many ancestors who allowed each and every one of you to live the lives that you do. To give thanks to their sacrifices for the food you eat, the water you drink, and to the Salish people for whose land you occupy now. I challenge each and every one of us to fight for our future generations and to think of how you would like to see a future for our coming generations, for our daughters, our granddaughters, nieces, for our sons, grandsons, and our nephews. What will you do to ensure a just, sustainable, and healthy future? May this afternoon inspire and ignite the flame that many ancestors fought for. To fight for a world that is left better for our next generations, to continue to fight against oppression, genocide, and violent systems that seek to suppress our democracy. I thank each of our participants and attendees here this afternoon and pray that we have a safe and productive afternoon and that everyone makes it home safely and ready for the difficulties that we face every morning and in each night. So again, I thank every one of you for being here this evening or afternoon and for allowing me to be here with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. Second, here we've got Kate Tillis is our moderator. We're so thrilled that she could be with us today. Well, Kate, come on out. There you go. All right, from here on out, it's your job. Good luck.
Oh, boy. Thank you, Sammy and Jeff. Spokane Indivisible and SURJ, Standing Up for Racial Justice, have come together to host Power to the People, the CD5 Candidate Forum, featuring Democratic and independent candidates running for Congress in Washington's 5th District. This forum was built around a simple idea. The people of Eastern Washington should be at the center of this conversation. Rather than asking candidates what they want to talk about, because we all know we love to do that, today's questions are rooted in the concerns, experiences, and priorities of the communities they hope to represent. To make that possible, local community leaders will ask questions on behalf of the residents from across the region, because representation should begin with listening. Thank you to KSPS for live streaming today's event. The full recording, including closed captioning, will be available on the KSPS YouTube channel. I also, and this is very exciting for me, want to do a special shout out to the communities across Eastern Washington hosting 32 watch parties today and helping, yes. And helping expand civic engagement throughout our region. It's a team sport, we all have to do it. All right, now for some audience guidelines. Before we begin, just a few guidelines to keep this forum respectful, productive, and focused on the candidates' responses. Applause. Please wait until a candidate has completely finished speaking before applauding, and please limit this applause to 5 to 10 seconds. Respectful listening. Please remain quiet while candidates are speaking so everyone can hear each response. Any disruptions or outbursts will result in removal from the theater. Green and red cards. Holding up a green card signals approval. A red card signals disapproval. Please use the cards instead of vocal reactions during candidates' responses. Now, a straw poll. Many of you may have noticed on the back of your green card is a straw poll. At the conclusion of the forum, please select only one candidate. And a note on beverages. Water is the only beverage permitted in the theater, and so we thank you for helping create a space where every voice, and especially the community's voice, can be heard clearly. Before we begin, I'd now like to explain a little bit about the forum rules and how today's seating arrangements and procedures were established. To ensure fairness and impartiality, candidates' names were placed into a hat and drawn at random to determine seating order. Every candidate will receive equal speaking time. All candidates will answer the same moderated questions. A countdown timer will be visible to candidates and moderators. Responses are limited to 90 seconds. The timer will turn yellow when 15 seconds remain and red when time expires. Candidates are expected to conclude promptly when time is called. And candidates, I will hold you to this. I have a 5-year-old. Don't make me use my mom voice. Opening and closing statements. Opening statements will be 2 minutes per candidate. Time permitting, candidates will also have an opportunity for a closing statement. The speaking order for opening statements will follow today's seated order from audience left to right. For moderated questions, the candidates will rotate the order they answer the question to ensure fairness. If there's any question, I will be keeping track, so you can always look to me as to who will be the first to answer a question. Endorsements and a note on the additional candidates in this race. This is a nonpartisan event, and neither Spokane Indivisible nor SURJ is endorsing any candidate. We also want to acknowledge that additional candidates have entered the race since planning for this forum was completed. While they could not be accommodated today, voters will have many opportunities to hear from them at future candidate forums. And finally, a huge thank you to the Spokane County Sheriff's Department. We have Deputies Joel Gorham and Chris Kyle, and the PJALS Peacekeepers for helping ensure a safe and welcoming event for everybody. Yes. Now, let's meet the candidates participating in today's forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. Anne-Marie Danimus, the floor is yours.
Testing, testing. Clean air. Testing, testing. How about now? Yes? Okay. I'm reclaiming my time. Okay. Clean air, fresh water, not having to check your bank account to take your family out to dinner, being able to retire without being forced to choose between food and medicine. This is not the American dream. This is the American struggle. It's become about survival, and in the richest country in the world. My name is Anne-Marie Danimus. No. Testing. Oh, hello. Are we awake now? My name is Anne-Marie Danimus. I own my own business where I help small businesses grow, and I handle their marketing. I've been doing this for about 30 years, and we concentrate on calculated cuts and calculated investments to spur growth. And what the United States has done is calculated cuts to the American people and investment in the billionaire class. And that's what is leaving us counting pennies to pay rent. I have 19 points of policy that we need to pass to make America affordable again. And when people can afford to live, they will be kinder. And it's unfortunate that that's the way society works. But I have the tools and the skills to get this done. What I need from you, the voters, is the office to make that happen. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thanks to everybody who came out today to participate in our democracy. We really appreciate your attention, and all of those watching and all those watch parties and at home, thanks also for tuning in. I'm David Womack. I am a retired Air Force colonel. My last job in the Air Force was as the commander of the medical group at Fairchild Air Force Base. After that, I ran 2 rural civilian hospitals, one in Illinois, and then I had the good fortune to come back and be the CEO of the hospital in Colfax, Washington. After that, I was a senior vice president for Kaiser Permanente, where I was responsible for the care of 115,000 members, had 1,100 people on staff, 200 physicians, and a budget north of $700 million a year, and it balanced every single year, unlike the federal government. My wife and I now live in Walla Walla, where I've been very involved in the community. I've been the president of the Homeless Alliance. I've been on the city sustainability committee, a member of Rotary, on my church council, and I can tell you more later on. So I am running because when I was 23 years old and was commissioned an officer in the Air Force, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. For 26 years in the Air Force, I never understood why it said "and domestic." And today I do, because our Constitution is under threat from our very own government. I can't believe I'm standing up here saying that. But you can trace all the ills we face today, all the things that Anne Marie just talked about, back to our congressman and those like him who are not putting the brakes on this administration and fulfilling the very mission of our government as is outlined in the preamble to the Constitution. That's why I'm running for you, for the Constitution.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am here for the same reason that so many of you are here, is that we are living through a crisis, a tragedy that has been growing over the last 50 years, the collapse of the American middle class. We see it on our streets. You go downtown, we have a homeless population and no idea with a way to provide services to help them. We go to the grocery store. It costs multiple hours of wages to get a bag of groceries, $50 for a bag of groceries. We have home prices and rent prices that lock our young people out of the American dream, steal from them the ability to find stability, to raise a family, and plan for the future, and have any hope of retirement. We are in this position because we have let billionaires and greedy corporations pay lobbyists to buy our politicians, to own our government. Both political parties have been chasing corporate money. I'm a union firefighter. I have been for the last 14 years. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I work in the same neighborhood that I grew up in. I have been watching this tragedy, I'm not 50, but grow for the last 30 years. Until we put people in these positions that care about the people of their districts, represent the people of their districts, instead of their political parties, we will find no solace from these tragedies. this crisis. I'm running as an independent because that is the right fit for this district. When we go to the election in November, we need to find the candidate that will beat Baumgartner, who is subservient to his party and is working for those same corporate billionaires. My name's Nate Powell. Thank you for being here.
I'm the guinea pig. All right, I got a good mic. Let's go. My name is Kevin Fagan. I'm a progressive Democrat, a downtown Spokane resident, and a renter. I'm a Gonzaga grad who sees broken system after broken system in this country. And as someone who's younger, I know that we are not on a sustainable path. My background is in climate change and sustainability, but that's just one of the many issues that's going in the wrong direction right now. Whether it's healthcare, housing, energy, all of our systems are in crisis. And we don't even have a representative that can show up, that can face his community, that can see the results of his own actions, like passing the big beautiful bill, like gutting Medicaid and rural healthcare, like what he's doing to our farmers right now in the Palouse, causing fertilizer prices to skyrocket because of the Iran war. And so I'm running because we need change, but we don't just need incremental change. These systems, like Nate said, they've been breaking for the last 50 years. The corporate influence in our politics and in our daily life is only making things worse. And what do we get with moderation is just the continuation of the same slide down. And so I'm a progressive Democrat. I believe in Medicare for all. I believe in affordability that truly affects everything. And I know that we cannot just get things done with moderate change. We need to be bold. And so there's many progressive leaders around the country that I'm inspired by. I'm inspired by Zoran Mondani, James Tallarico, people able to speak truth to power. And we need that here in District 5. And that is exactly what's going to beat Baumgartner in November. Thank you.
$1 billion a day war at a cost of higher gas, higher diesel, higher groceries, higher fertilizer prices. Healthcare through the roof, rents and mortgages keep going up while paychecks stay flat. These are all choices that have been supported by our current member of Congress. And these are choices that we can fix by making a change there. My name's Carmela Conroy. I was born and raised in Spokane by people who were born and raised in Eastern Washington, by people who were born and raised in Eastern Washington. I grew up in a blue-collar household, and I put myself through school, and then I came home to be a deputy prosecutor here in Spokane County. After that, I became a Foreign Service officer, and I pursued open, accountable governments and open, inclusive economies in DC, Afghanistan, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, and Pakistan. And for those 24 years, I held myself accountable to the law and to my job and to the people of the United States. And I negotiated trade and difficult national security issues across partisan, ethnic, religious, and national boundaries. And I know that with your help, we can get what we need from Congress. That means holding the executive branch accountable. And that's what Michael Baumgartner told us that he would do for us when he ran for office in 2024. But that's not what he's done. He appears to be far more interested in cozying up to elites than checking their power. If you elect me to be your representative in Congress, I will hold accountable the powerful and the rich. I'll hold accountable sex traffickers and other people who are abusing their power, and make sure that our government is accountable to us, the people here in Eastern Washington. And I hope to have your vote. Thank you.
I'm going to remain seated. Please don't consider it as disrespect. My name is Bajan Mavalwala. Bajan rhymes with Cajun. Mavalwala rhymes with Walla Walla. So, some of you may have seen the news about the recent conviction of my son here in Spokane in federal court on a charge of conspiracy, a law left over from the Civil War. Everything that everyone here has said is true, but I don't want to talk about crisis du jour. We're aware of that. What I want to talk about is where we go forward, and we're not going anywhere unless we can defeat Michael Baumgartner. My single question for all of you out there is, would you want to defeat Michael Baumgartner? But the top number of Democrats in this district is 45%. And continuing to go to Democrats and telling them to vote harder is how we've lost this seat for over 3 decades. You have to be able to cross party lines. I live in Stevens County, right in the belly of the beast. All right? You have to have issues where you can get to swing voters. You have to be able to peel off at least some Republican voters. The issues that I am talking about are the ones that will resonate across party lines. I have a 26-year-long military career, including 2 years in Iraq and 2 tours in Afghanistan. I worked for a living in the Pile Drivers Union. I have the ability to talk to people beyond the party, and I see a bright red flash before me that tells me to shut up.
Okay, we're going to try this mic again. Is it better? Yes? Okay, great. Let's give all the candidates another round of applause. It takes a lot of courage to be up here and putting yourself out there, and I just want to let you know that I personally thank all of you for doing what you're doing. This afternoon's questions come directly from a community survey conducted by Spokane Indivisible. The survey asked a simple question: what do you want your government to do for you? The responses identified the issues people care about the most, and today's questions are drawn directly from those priorities. To help bring these concerns to life, community leaders from organizations across Eastern Washington will present the questions. Today's topics include affordability, immigration, constitutional issues, healthcare, climate, and gun safety. These issues were identified by community members themselves, and they will guide our conversation today. For the first round of questions, I would like to welcome our first community leader, who will be asking 3 questions on the topic of affordability. Alicia Lemchenko is the president of Eastern Washington University Political and International Affairs Community, a student organization dedicated to civic engagement, public discourse, and leadership development. Through discussions, events, and advocacy opportunities, the organization helps students engage with issues shaping our communities and our democracy. Thank you for being here, Alicia. And Anne-Marie, you will be the first to answer this question. David, you will be the second, and so on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and it's nice to see you all again. For the first question, most older Americans were able to buy their first home in their 20s or 30s. Now, people have to be in their 40s before they can afford their first home. What will your policy be for affordable housing?
Affordable housing comes down to several issues. Some of them are just the price of the homes, because we have a supply shortage. Almost anything that is for sale operates under the conditions of supply and demand. And this is where most people focus their attention. But there are additional issues like building materials. I have a bill I have written called Hemp Hooray that examines alternative sources for building, and also local zoning restricts building in many ways. And so to create a national guideline platform to go down to cities, counties, and states to spur investment in building and making sure to protect consumers when they purchase mortgages. All of these things are just elemental to increasing what is available, to making it sustainable and more affordable to build, and by creating a space to put these homes, and finally, accessibility. Thank you.
Affordable housing, the main issue, the primary issue is just simply a lack of housing. With the 2008 housing crash, a lot of builders quit building. A lot of labor left the force. And now there's a shortage of housing as the population has continued to grow. Four main components of that: land, labor, materials, and regulation. Land, we can incentivize local communities to change their zoning so that we have denser, more building. With labor, we can invest in the trade schools and in community colleges to increase the labor pool so we can in fact have people to build houses. Materials, we can reduce tariffs on certain materials. For instance, 80% of our lumber here in Eastern Washington comes from Canada. We have high tariffs on that. We can lower those and have cheaper materials. And then regulation around permitting especially, we can incentivize local jurisdictions to speed up their permitting process and to make that better. We can also invest in new methods of building. Today, we still build houses as much as we did 100 years ago with stick-built houses. We can do more pre-manufactured components that essentially create housing kits that we can then train people in the labor programs to produce as well. And then we also need to take a look at reduced financing for new homeowners and for public servants such as first responders and public school teachers as well. And I'm well out of time, so be happy to talk about this more out in the lobby with everyone.
Question is affordable housing. I think many of us up here will agree that this is a supply side issue. We just simply do not have enough housing. The regulatory burden makes that housing more expensive. I want to build all forms of new housing without keeping that focus on affordable housing. Affordable housing costs twice as much per square foot as market rate housing because of that regulatory burden. So increasing the overall housing supply with a focus on density to protect our lands is important. The city of Spokane has fantastic density, pro-density laws. We can bring that up to the federal level, incentivize that at the federal level. Houses are very expensive, partly because we have let corporate buyers come in and turn that basic need into an investment asset. So regulations around corporations and large institutional buyers, preventing them from buying single-family homes that are supposed to have people living in them, not be for rent continuously. Wages. I'm going to be talking about this a lot. Basically, the entire time I'm up on this stage, people need to make more money. We need to reinvigorate the labor movement in this country so that people can fight for higher wages. The affordability crisis is a problem of things are very expensive and people just don't make enough money. To go in one more thing before I'm out of time, tariffs, they're making it harder. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, not surprisingly, not much disagreement amongst this group around identifying the issues of really it is mainly a supply side issue where we simply do not have enough housing of all types. I absolutely agree with Nate's point about the pro-density point. We should not be endlessly expanding into the suburbs that create not only the desecration of our natural lands, but also a dependency on car ownership that doesn't talk about affordability. The average American family spends about $10,000 per year on car ownership. And so if we can reduce the need to even own those vehicles, that would be great. Another big point is in the last year, we had a huge immigration push, an arresting of people who with no criminal records, and those people, amongst others, were building our homes. So if we lose the labor, if we lose the ability to actually build, we had these great policies put in place, but then our current administration gutted those. And so we absolutely need to talk about immigration reform as well. And then agree with Nate, absolutely, we need to ban private equity from single-family home ownership because that is absolutely heading in the wrong direction, and it's making the American dream inaccessible. Thank you.
Yep, what everybody here said. And we live in one of the most beautiful parts of the country, and we have a growing population. And maybe some of you are people who moved here from higher rent places like the San Francisco Bay Area or the Seattle area, any place on the I-5 corridor, when the COVID pandemic started. And it was cheaper and easier and a greater quality of life here in Spokane, Walla Walla, Pullman, wherever else in Eastern Washington that you've now chosen to call home. Welcome. In the city of Walla Walla first, and later the city of Spokane came up with ways to improve density, to do away with single-family residential neighborhoods, allow us easier access to capital, and to put greater density in. But what can Congress do? What Congress can do is keep this administration from tariff wars. The trade chaos has put the prices up. And Michael Baumgartner, when he was asked why he voted against normalizing trade relations with Canada, said, I know it would be better for my district, but I asked Speaker Mike Johnson what I should do, and he asked me to vote against that, so I did. That's not what we need from our congressional representative. The other thing is that Michael Baumgartner and others in this administration said that immigration, border security meant going after the worst of the worst, but as we have seen, some of us with greater personal impact than others, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, DOJ, are not going after the worst of the worst. They're going after essential workers in our own communities, and Congress has to stop that, and they can, and I would.
What I think we've just seen is a demonstration that this is not a single problem. Housing is a problem set. There are tremendous factors at play that cause the cost of housing to go up. Now, we have seen a history of successful programs. The most successful program in the history of this country was the GI Bill. It put millions of people into homes that had never had that kind of opportunity in their lives. And there is a general named Stanley McChrystal who is at the Aspen Institute talking about making young people stakeholders in our society again and offering them, in exchange for government services, to be given a GI Bill type opportunity. All the things everybody said here is absolutely true. I come from a union background. I was in the pile drivers. Yes, we need to have higher wages. We have not raised the minimum wage in decades. We have to be going and looking at corporate ownership. The oligarchy, as we can rightfully call it, is going after our homes to where the very roof over your head is not even under your control. So what I want to be talking about when we're dealing with these things are these are systemic problems. So we have to deal with them there. The other thing is because it is a problem set, There is no silver bullet. Let's start talking about the overarching problems that are facing our government.
All right, thank you so much. For the second question, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Trump administration has set a record for the fewest number of new jobs created monthly in the U.S. since 2003, with the main drivers of record low job growth being the economic instability created from trade wars caused by Trump's illegal tariffs and job losses in many sectors from AI. What will you do to reverse this trend, and how will you partner with business and education to promote greater opportunities for graduates of trade schools and universities?
I'm first? Okay, just checking. So the question almost answers itself in some ways, and it's promoting greater opportunities through trade schools and universities. And I will tell you that I have a fair amount of experience in that. When I was working with Kaiser Permanente, I was also the president of an economic development corporation, and this was a public-private partnership that the goal was to bring more jobs into the community. In the last year I was president of that, we brought 40,000 new jobs into our community. And in full transparency, we didn't do that every year. That was just the last year, and it was a culmination of a lot of work. But what that took was elected officials, staffers from government, people from private business who came together and wanted to bring more jobs into the community. And what did we find out? That the number one thing that people wanted, new companies coming to our community wanted, was they wanted to know if there was a ready workforce. A ready workforce. And most of the light manufacturing that we were looking at, they wanted engineering people. So we took that group, and then we brought in the universities, and then we brought in the community college to create an engineering program and a community college programs to feed that. And then we went to the secondary schools and had talked to them about it, and they started teaching pre-engineering. And you put all that together, and all of a sudden, we had engineering students coming out and 4,000 new jobs into the community. And that's what it takes, is a lot of collaboration and coalition building. And I think that's what the job in Congress takes, is coalition building. Thank you.
So creating some new jobs means we need to be building things here. The challenge with this is it is cheaper to build things other places. That's why tariffs used as a tool can protect American industry. The current way they have been used is to create trade wars, which crush our export markets and reduce the number of jobs that we have here. So tariffs need to be used surgically as a tool to protect American industry. As David said, we need the workforce that can do those jobs. There are jobs available. We need our people trained to be able to do this work. That's why I advocate for pulling a 2-year AA and a trade school into the community college program, into public school program. It would cost $50 billion a year to make AA and trade school a public school, bring it within the public school system to create the workforce that could actually do those jobs. We are going to be living in a future that is wildly different than the time we are living in right now, because AI is coming and we do not know what is going to happen. But it will be wildly different, and we need to prepare for that. And that starts with investing in the people, the youth, so that they can be prepared for that future. Thank you.
So on the one hand, we have enormous job loss potentially due to AI, but could be for many reasons. And then on the other hand, we have crumbling infrastructure. We have aging bridges, roads. We can't even build a frickin' train in California. And so why do we have all of this job loss, and yet we can't build anything? We need investment in our workforce as well as our country. This requires a Green New Deal. This requires federal investment from the top down that prepares us for the effects of climate change, builds more resilient communities, creates good paying jobs, because we need to be prepared for the future. We can't keep reacting every single time there's a new president who wants to put in a different tariff, and that causes prices to go up. We need this massive reinvestment. Also, on the note of supporting trains, I have a personal policy point that if I was your congressperson, I would fight to get an inland Northwest passenger rail here in going from Idaho through Spokane down to the Palouse on existing tracks, because that's an example of it's already there. Let's try to actually build the future that we deserve. We don't have to keep listening to people tell us it's not possible. So that's what I would do. Thank you.
The chaos in the business environment these days, because of the tariffs, because of the chaotic immigration enforcement, that all drives down job creation and puts businesses on hold while they try to figure out what to do. One of the things that Congress can do, and what I would do, is establish a federal minimum wage at a working level. Like somewhere between $15 and $25 an hour is probably what it should be, because right now, what major corporations are doing is they're playing states off against each other, so that states engage in a race to the bottom in terms of worker safety standards, in terms of minimum wages, in terms of insurance standards, so that they can get a better deal across the border. And if you live in a border community, you see it every day. People living in Idaho, where the builders don't have to meet the same standards that they have to meet in Washington State, but then they drive into Washington State to work and then go home and then they pay income taxes to Idaho. So a federal minimum wage, so the corporations won't be able to pay their employees such a low amount that they pocket the profit, they privatize the profit, and they socialize the expenses of healthcare and housing and education and the other things that everybody here needs and that the world's largest economy ought to be able to provide to everybody who lives here. Thank you.
"90 seconds is absolutely not enough time to cover any of the topics that we're being given here. So please forgive myself and everybody up here for not always hitting the nail on the head on what you are hoping to hear. Talk to everybody afterwards and make sure and talk about your ideas as well. That's how we learn. So what I would like to touch on my little aspect. Anyone ever been to Germany? You know what they do in Germany in school? The trade unions teach in the high schools. Why don't we have the trade unions in our high schools teaching our shop classes and then give those students credit towards their apprenticeship when they finish high school? Trade schools are often used as union busting tools in a lot of states to keep people out of trade unions. Let's be looking at the bigger problems that we have and then going back and addressing each one of them. Kevin, I love the rail thing. It actually exists. Just like the 395 corridor, right? People have been waiting decades for that thing to happen. But it's always been there, except the Republican representatives from this district voted against it. Then Kathy McMorris Rogers shows up with a big pair of scissors to cut the ribbon after voting against the budget. So again, we've got to be looking at all kinds of things that can do to increase our economy, but making access to our good jobs. That starts from the beginning, and we can make policies at the federal level that support things at the lower level. And I'm going to bab for just one more second, and that is, let's start coordinating with our state and local representatives as well.
Okay, I've worked in business development for 30 years. There are huge, big, overarching ideas that have been expressed by all the candidates, and for the most part, I agree with them. If you raise the minimum wage, which we absolutely need to do, who it's going to hurt is small businesses. So In my 19 points, I am suggesting a FICA honeymoon for micro businesses. Almost all businesses make less than $1 million. So that offsets for in a few years the additional costs they are paying in labor. We need to not only look at the big picture, but focus in specifically on this district, because these programs are going to take forever to land here. Specifically, we need cottage industries and vertical markets that we can court to come here. Our district has similarities with other districts in the country. I plan to make friends with those people, present these ideas, and get them passed through. The big ones will happen with time, but you need focused energy on creating jobs here that we know will work, that take into consideration the natural environment, the skills, and all the resources we have available to us now.
Thank you so much. And for my last question, we'll begin with Nate Powell, just to make sure. The disparity in wealth and income has increased dramatically because of the big, beautiful bill. What policies would you support to create more income equity?
The big, beautiful bill gave permanent tax breaks to billionaires, small temporary tax cuts to working people, pushed up the national debt, and cut our social services. To tackle this income inequality, I told you I was going to talk about it all night. We need labor protections and the right to organize so that people can fight for higher wages. There is no mechanism that the government has to truly lower prices. Even if they lower input costs, COVID showed us those big corporations hold on to those high prices and take extra profits. So we need labor protection so workers can fight for higher wages. I am up here because when that bill got passed, I knew I needed to do something. I am endorsed by the Washington State Labor Council because my focus is fighting for working people. We are not going to get out of this affordability crisis with small measures. We need to re-empower the institutions that protect our workers, consumers, and small businesses, Department of Labor, the National Labor Relations Board, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that is supposed to protect you, consumers, from unethical, immoral, and illegal business practices. Until these institutions that are supposed to be protecting our people are re-empowered, refunded, and have people in those leadership positions that actually care about the people they're supposed to protect, we will not get out of this affordability crisis. And while we are in this crisis, the normal person on the street cannot consider the bigger systemic issues that we are facing, like our attacks on democracy and the corruption that we are seeing in our government.
People are absolutely feeling the pain right now, especially working class families, especially those with young kids that are deciding whether to put their kids in childcare or to have someone stay home to take care of them. And so we need to start by enacting universal childcare so that every family is entitled to that. We also need to look at our tax code that allows billionaires and millionaires to pay significantly less percentage of their tax and their income as a percentage of their income than working class people. We have people scraping to get by, and we are paying more as a percentage of our taxes than them. That is not okay. I supported the Washington State Millionaires Tax when it passed earlier this year, and that is a step in the right direction, but it also absolutely begs the question of when you have these patchwork state income tax policies that's just going to be having millionaires and billionaires bopping around to the states with the lowest tax code and making sure they spend half their time in that state. We need federal legislation and complete reform of our tax code in order to get started on this. Thank you.
agree with all of this. So there's a difference between wealth and income. High income earners do pay a fair amount of taxes, but labor is taxed at a far higher rate than wealth is taxed, unless your wealth is your family home. And for most of us, the biggest thing that we have to hold wealth, to have something to pass on to the next generation, is our homes. But for people who are born into massive wealth, they pay next to nothing on that. But my nieces and nephews who are public school teachers and firefighters and corrections officers and window makers, they pay twice as much of their income into Social Security as an attorney making $350,000 a year. That's wrong. We ought to have higher income people paying a progressive level of tax on their income, not paying less than low income people are. And we ought to figure out a way to get corporations to pay for the benefits that they receive from our robust government services. When we have the government shutdown and everybody was having to stand in line at airports, you know who wasn't having to stand in line, who didn't have to worry about not getting their services? Corporations going to federal courthouses every single day of the week. And federal courthouses are mostly filled up with civil suits between corporations chopping up a bigger piece of the pie than the rest of us are getting. And we can stop that too.
Our tax structure is the culprit right now on the uber wealthy, the hyper wealthy. And we have to remember that they gain the vast majority of benefits from this government. When was the last time the Department of Commerce did anything for you? The United States Navy keeps the high seas free for Jeff Bezos. What we need to be doing with our own Congress, however, is to remember that it is a body of 435. None of us are going to go in there and clean up that town. We are not going to go in there and drain the swamp. We are going to have to go in there and make friends and allies and, yes, work across the aisle. And when people tell me that's not possible, I will point you to Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, who are working together on the Epstein files and against the Iran war. There are absolutely ways to do this. The thing is, a lot of the things that we have to do are hard. And we have to have a triage of our own things. My plan is we have short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. Some of these things that are going to have to get done have to start now, and I will be 6 feet under when they are finally brought in to benefit my grandchildren. We have to be looking at long-term. You cannot run a nation on a quarterly basis. So we'd go to the big, beautiful bill and start pulling those threads. We cannot have the luxury of saying, this is where I'm going to start, because there's more to it than just us as an individual and member of Congress.
I need to stand up for this one. The big, beautiful bill was the final nail in the coffin that has been built for the last 50 years. And, you know, all of the other very fine people on this stage, big ideas and theories and statistics, and everyone nods along because we all know it. We all know it. But here's the thing. We've known it for a while. I have been covering this issue, it's not my first time on this stage, for years and for years before that. The Republican lie is that trickle-down economics is good for you. And the Democratic lie is that they're going to do anything about it. I have listened to politicians for decades. This is what we need. Google it. AI will tell you exactly how to fix the U.S. government. But what we need is people who have the strategy. Oh, it's not big ideas or small ideas. You know what? It's both. And as your representative, I'm going to work those small ideas to take care of my people while negotiating to get corporate influence out of government, because all of these decisions that have been made have been paid for. And it doesn't really take a constitutional crisis of this magnitude, where we are borderline fascist, for Republicans to stand up and go, okay, let's talk. Nonsense. You know it's all a lie. They may not be birds of the same feather or feathers of the same bird, but they are branches of the same bank. I'm the only candidate that is not taking corporate or PAC money, and I will stand by you through big ideas and small.
With all due respect, Anne Marie, I don't have any corporate or PAC money either. All my contributions, as meager as they are, come from individuals just like you. Just to clarify. So you've heard it up here, and now's our opportunity to do something about it. We have to reverse the tax policy. We have to make it much more progressive. During the Eisenhower administration, the top bracket was 90%. Today it's 37%, but you don't even pay 37% if you're rich and you don't get a W-2. What you do is a strategy called buy and borrow. So you hold assets, real estate, stocks and bonds, and then you borrow from the bank for that, and you pay it back at, what, 4 or 5%, instead of paying that 37% back to the federal government. And you keep that, and you don't pay any tax on it until you go to sell it, and then you pay a greatly reduced amount of tax, nowhere near the 37%, it's 15, 20, or 25%. Sorry to get so much down in the details on it, but that's where you have to go with these sorts of things. And then when you die, you pass it on to their heirs, and the inheritance tax is very, very small, and it's revalued, and they pass on generational wealth forever. We've got to change it. Right now, that over the course of 40 years has made the top 1% where they have more wealth than 92% of all Americans. But now, with this resistance that is building, we can change this in the future.
Thank you all. Just a quick reminder, when you see red there, this mic doesn't work when yours works, unfortunately, but like every English teacher will remind us, please no run-on sentences. I will let you finish your last sentence. Thank you. Our next round of questions focuses on immigration. To present those questions, we welcome Patricia Castaneda, co-founder and executive director of Manzanita House. Through her work, Through her work supporting thousands of immigrants and refugees from more than 100 countries now living in Spokane, Pat and everyone at the Manzanita House has helped strengthen and enrich our community in so many ways. Please join me in welcoming Pat.
I hope it works for me. Thank you very much, everybody. So I wanted to ask more questions, but they didn't allow me to do so. I just have to. Currently, Homeland Security is aggressively seeking to establish large detention facilities across the country. As our representative, how would you respond in Homeland Security if Homeland Security sought to purchase properties in CD5 to house detained immigrants, and how would you exercise your authority for oversight of such a facility? Oh, it's Kevin's.
Yeah, thank you. I was waiting for someone else to go, but I can go. Yeah, so the question at hand is about the ICE detention centers, and largely through these Department of Homeland Security, through ICE, is purchasing these detention centers throughout the country. And what used to happen a few years ago, back when I wouldn't call it sane immigration policy, but before what we had right now, was these immigration centers were outsourced to third-party companies. It'd be Geo Group, some soulless corporation that thought they can profit off of people being in prison. And so instead, ICE realized that with a significant budget boost, they could purchase these facilities on their own. They could run them with their own staff. And as we've seen, there's national news about immigrants, even citizens, dying in these facilities. And so, as your representative, personally, I'd rewind a little bit, abolish ICE, and then if they were still trying to build a facility in CD5, we would make sure to put a stop to that. And I think that starts with absolutely gutting their budget and building back up a sane immigration policy that actually allows people in this country to seek citizenship, that allows our DACA dreamers to get immigration status and citizenship status. Thank you.
Actually, the truth is worse than what Kevin said. ICE got over $1 billion in the Big Billionaire Bonus Act so that for-profit corporations could run the largest detention facility system in American history. It is nationwide, and it's even worse than what we had during World War II when we turned our system against Japanese Americans who were our neighbors and our fellow citizens. And it was racist and horrible then, and it took us about 30 years before we came around to pay reparations in those cases. I hope we can stop that sooner rather than later. In 2027, starting in January, we should be able to start that with a big blue wave in the House of Representatives to pull that money back, to stop the Department of Homeland Security and the Geo Group from imprisoning people who have never committed a crime in their lives. Being undocumented is the federal equivalent of having a license plate tab violation, and it is not something that people should be detained for. They should remain in our communities, continue to send their kids to school, continue to perform the essential work that allows our economy to grow, and continue to be in their own homes with their own families, contributing the way that the rest of us want them to. And it is a travesty that our current congressman voted to support and even defended Pam Bondi in the choices that she made to enable that to go ahead. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Democratic president that allows basically slave wages in a non-incarceral facility or not. That can't stop. And we owe a debt of gratitude to then AG Bob Ferguson and now AG Nick Brown for keeping that from happening in Washington State.
I might have an opinion or two on this topic. But let's talk about what the actual question is. The actual question is about detention facilities in this district, and I don't know if everybody knows how close we are. $400,000 was granted to the community of College Place, and then the federal government came and clawed that money back from them. The money had already been spent, however, so now College Place, a relatively small town, had to cough up $400,000. But when Michael Baumgartner was asked by the mayor, Norma Hernandez, he said, well, you know, if you'll put a detention facility in your community, we could see about getting you that money back. There's a word for that. It's called sinister. That is the condition that we're in. I want everyone also to recall that our good friend Homan is a CEO for a private prison company. This is not a matter of keeping our borders secure or safety for our citizens. This is a money-grubbing exercise. Kevin is also correct on ICE. ICE is a sick organization. It must be dismantled, but the way that it is dismantled is incredibly critical. We have to take their crucial missions, hand them over to other federal agencies, and everybody there has to be dismissed because they are already corrupt. And if you saw the witnesses in my son's case and their racism and their homophobia and their transphobia blatant on display for everyone to see, you know I'm right.
First of all, I want to apologize to Dave if I misrepresented his fundraising. A lot of times in the beginning, everybody only gets money from people, actual people, not PACs or corporate PACs. So the note pledge is not 1 penny ever, and I would like to invite David and all of the people to make that pledge, and you can penny pin not 1 penny ever of corporate money. Because usually once you get the office is when it floods in. So to the question, detention centers are really a symptom of a larger problem. And in the moment, I believe I may maneuver to try and prevent that, but also too, if the system proved very difficult to dismantle the way everyone here wants to, a detention center might be a positive step only to keep people near their loved ones. Because if red states, like all of a sudden they're shipped to Kansas, then there's no family, so I feel the importance of decriminalizing the process, but if we don't win and things get worse, that my opinion might change to keep people closer.
There's no question that the detention centers are an abomination to the American soul. Just absolutely. I'll never forget walking through Manzanar in the desert of California where Japanese were interned, as has been pointed out, and it just tears at your soul. Now, what can Congress actually do about this? Yes, in January of 2027, when there is a big blue wave and a bunch of other like-minded true patriots, not like what the other side calls patriots, we can start to use the tools of Congress, which is the power of the purse, to defund them. We can hold investigations, and we can start to hold people accountable for their behavior. And that probably includes the impeachment of a few cabinet members. Yeah, a lot of green cards out there. And it probably includes more DOJ prosecutions of some lower level officials as well. But we need to do that completely within the rule of law. And we need to point out that that is driven by evidence of violations of the rule of law, so that it is not vindictive, so that we do not create more enemies than we already have, and we try and heal our nation and bring people back together.
If we bar detention centers from being built here in Washington, they are not going to not get built. They will get built in other places like Idaho. I would prefer to have our detention centers here where we can ensure that the work is orderly and humane, and not push those detention centers into states with weak laws and weak politicians. Our immigration system has far overfunded internal immigration enforcement and underfunded the bureaucratic process, the attorneys, the immigration judges that allow people to move through our legal system and vet the immigrants who come into this country so that we can gain the value of their unique perspectives and their industry and their entrepreneurial attitudes and spirits. The focus here is that Our immigration system needs to work in the interests of Americans and America, be orderly and humane. We do not want to create a large population of undocumented people that are easily exploited by big business who benefits from having that population here. That is why it is so important that our legal system is robust enough to move people from entering our country to legal status.
Thank you. My second question, deportations are increasing in CD5 in ways that are not visible to the public. ICE agents have been found to ignore the constitutional rights and protections of individuals. As our representative, how would you ensure that ICE agents follow the law, both state and federal, regarding due process for immigrants and free speech for protesters such as the Spokane 9 and recently the Spokane 3?
Thank you. Yeah, if people of every skin color and every language and every accent don't have due process, none of us have due process. As a former deputy prosecuting attorney, I took very seriously that my job wasn't to get all the prosecutions I could get, it was to do justice on behalf of the people of the state of Washington. And when I was working national security with the State Department, when I was screening visa applications, when I was screening applications for U.S. citizenship, when I was screening to see whether somebody should be able to get on a plane or a boat to come to the United States, it was all about whether they had presented the evidence that we needed to see that they were going to follow the law and support our people here in America. And that's what the vast majority of immigrants have done. But what happened during my first assignment with the Department of State is that the cost of a family of 4 switching from, say, a tourist or short-term working status to an immigrant status was about $1,000. You could put it on your credit card, you'd maybe have to pay it off over time, but it was doable. In about 1997, the price of that went from $1,000 to $30,000. And very few of us can afford to reach into our pockets and pull out $30,000 or put that on our credit card. And we have made it almost impossible for regular working people we absolutely need for our economy to come here and live here and normalize their status and have the paperwork catch up with their lifestyles. And we need to reform our system to make that possible. And this administration, with the support of our current representative, has delegalized tens of thousands of people who came here, who are doing the right thing, who are waiting for that courtroom, and who are hauled away from their families. And we can stop that by getting new representation in Congress.
That Spokane 3, one of them is my son. He is facing 6 years in federal prison and a $250,000 fine. It is because he refused to plead guilty to a crime he did not commit. All of the mechanisms and governmental things that we're talking about are true, right? And we have to control ICE. We have to be making sure that the state laws are protecting our own citizens as well. Our immigrants are important to me. They're important to my son. My father left India on the deck of a boat and floated for 6 days through the Arabian Sea before he got to Kuwait. But I'm going to turn this around a little bit. It is incumbent upon all of you as well. The right to protest must be exercised or we will lose it. Constitutional rights are not a gift. They are not a guarantee. You have to fight for them every single day. And I want to touch on one thing very quickly. I have been to Auschwitz. I've been to Tule Lake. I've been to Manzanar. Concentration camps are never okay. We will never build them in Eastern Washington. We will never give our approval for a fascist regime.
The rule of law is what makes this country what it is, both in the rights that we have, even though they may be under threat and under pressure right now and broken. They also create the problems that we see in our country, because who has influence in federal government is not you. It's not the voters, especially under current leadership, because he's not serving you. He much as admitted it. And I think it was Carmela Orbage, and he admits it almost every day. So in order to make sure that we have a robust rule of law, we need to be electing people that actually represent the people, because we, the people, by and for the people. It's like we say it and not feel what it means. And in many cases, that includes our guests. And when you stand up for someone else's rights, you're standing up for your own. Immigration is a topic that has been weaponized, much like the Jews were weaponized in World War II. They're taking our jobs. We need a PR campaign to prove how much immigrants contribute to our society, and to stand by the rules that are written to keep and to support them here, and come together behind it.
It's just darn inspiring to be sitting up here with these individuals. It really is. And thank you. The question is about ICE. And as your representative, I will do what I can to disband ICE. It is rotten to the core. It is rotten to the core. A couple of quick examples. They actually teach constitutional protections in their very abbreviated training, and they take a test over that. About half of them fail that portion of the test. It's an open book test. Yeah. Another little known fact, the proportion of ICE agents who have been convicted of violent crimes is higher than the proportion of undocumented immigrants who commit violent crimes. Yeah, where's the justice in this? Immigration enforcement, I believe we can have secure borders, and we can do it humanely, and immigration control belongs at the border, not in our schools, not in our neighborhoods, not in our churches. It belongs at the border, and that's what I will work for.
So the current enforcement strategy of ICE has been disorderly, costly, chaotic, inhumane, cruel, on purpose to try and cool any resistance to that movement. The actions of the Spokane Three was courageous and principled, more courageous because they knew the potential fallout from their actions. But as Bajan said, we need to stand up for those rights and fight for them and take that risk, otherwise we will lose them. We need to move our ICE enforcement off of the streets, out of the schools, not in the hospitals, but you have to have enforcement of our laws. That, I believe that we need to have our ICE agents working and detaining actual criminals, and that means allowing them to work within our jail systems and pull people into enforcement, one, they have contact with our legal system through committing other crimes, and that would disincentivize them from the cruel, inhumane enforcement that they have been engaging in now that is designed to make us afraid.
First off, I just want to say thank you, Pat, for all of the great work you do at Manzanita House and for the question. Immigrants are what make this country great. We know that. All of us were most likely once immigrants or the descendants of them. Unless you're Native American, we came here searching for a better life. Our relatives came here because this promised land, this Statue of Liberty, this region could be great. It's what makes us great. And yet today, we have Immigrations and Customs Enforcement that has long lost their mission. And so yes, absolutely, we need to abolish ICE. Then we need to take the next steps. As you know, we're running for federal Congress. We control the purse strings, and so we need to reallocate that budget into not only sane policy and enforcement, but also making it possible for people to become legal citizens as well, and streamlining that process so we don't have to worry nearly as much about how people are detained, because we're providing a path to citizenship. We're providing that same thing that you and I wanted, because we were blessed to maybe be born here or immigrated here. And so we should give the same opportunity to people around the world. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. For our third round of questions, please welcome Matthew Johansson of Colville Indivisible, who will be presenting our next questions on healthcare. Matthew has been a leader in building civic engagement and advocacy in the Colville community. He also brings a personal connection to today's topic through his wife, who serves as a physician at Colville's local hospital, giving him firsthand insight into the healthcare challenges facing rural Eastern Washington. Matthew, thank you for being here.
Eastern Washington's rural hospitals face possible closure due to healthcare funding cuts. Also, Spokane's 4 largest hospitals report losing $200 million per year since 2022. Oh, should I start over? All right, I'll go ahead and start over. Okay. Eastern Washington's rural hospitals face possible closure due to healthcare funding cuts. Also, Spokane's 4 largest hospitals report losing $200 million per year since 2022, with $300 million in annual losses forecast to begin in 2027. Congress has done nothing to resolve this crisis. What solution do you propose, and how will you work to make this happen?
Two years ago, I was the campaign manager for Dr. Bernadine Bank. And I'll tell you what, you can get some very, very fast lessons working for a physician who works for Chaz. And there's a tremendous number of opportunities for us to build on what we have in the community, for example, with Chaz. But we need to remember the time bomb that has been placed into the big, beautiful bill, which is not going to come to fruition until 2027, where the funding is going to be slashed for our rural hospitals. And I want to talk about the cascading effect of those cuts. The hospital in Dayton is the largest employer in that community. The downstream effects of that is that a tremendous number of those businesses will be closed when that hospital goes. Pomeroy is in the smallest county in the state. It's also the reddest county. I highly recommend you go and visit there. It's a very interesting experience. The thing about the hospital there is that the dollars and cents are never going to add up. There's only 2,500 people who live there. But the value of the wheat that's grown there, the value of the community that is there far exceeds the value or the dollars that are there. We need other metrics. We need to keep our rural hospitals open. I live up in Stevens County. There's no place to have a baby up there. There's no obstetrics. So you're going to have to be looking at the, never mind.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm a type 1 diabetic and I've had a double organ transplant. So I've been on the service end of the medical systems for quite some time. Healthcare is even in the nonprofit environment, it's so privatized because, you know, I spoke earlier about vertical markets and the benefit to an economy in a community. But when you have the entire healthcare market as a vertical market, that is a monopoly that needs to be trust busted. Because the same people who own the hospitals also own the clinics, and they own, like in the case of one, they also own CVS, and then they own the negotiating company that negotiates with the drug producers who are getting all the rights that they have from our patents. We, the people, pay 99% of all R&D, research and development, for new drugs. Now, that's only part of it. Testing and getting FDA approval is what the drug companies pay for. But before they're granted those patents, they belong to us, we the people, and they are triple dipping us. They're not broke with, ooh, okay, more on that later. Stay tuned.
So the question is, what are we going to do about the funding shortages? One of the biggest things we can do is repeal the pieces of the one big beautiful bill that took the funds away to start with. That was the reductions in the ACA subsidies and the bureaucratic hurdles put into Medicaid. The Washington Healthcare Authority predicts that 35,000 people right here in Michael Baumgartner's district will lose their insurance this year based off of his vote. My next door neighbor gets her care through the ACA. She paid $8,500 for her policy last year. This year, exact same policy, $20,000. She made it this year. She says if it goes up like that again next year, she'll drop out. She'll drop out. And that gasp is right there. Beyond restoring those things, all those rural hospitals out there, there's something called critical access hospitals. They already get a little bit of a break from the federal government. They get paid 101% of their costs to treat Medicare patients. 1%. Show me a business that can survive on a 1% margin and give raises to people for cost of living, invest in new technologies. It can't be done, but at least it covers their cost. So then they get the rest of their funds from commercial insurance, which drives up everybody else's prices. It's just a vicious cycle. You know, if we raise that from 101 to 104, it'd make all the difference in the world. That's what I would work on.
The big beautiful bill is the reason that I'm in this race. When I saw those cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, I knew that they would manifest directly in the lives of the people that I serve in my work. I'm a medical professional, very lowest level, but I am one. I have stood in the living room with a man having a heart attack. All the symptoms, 10 out of 10, crushing chest pain. Hooked up to our EKG monitor. I'm not a paramedic. My partner is. She's looking at that, says that is a heart attack. That man would not go to the hospital with his wife, let alone take an ambulance that we had right there with him, because he was more afraid of the debt than of dying in his living room. He had a job, small business owner, but the struggle to make it to the end of the month made it meant to him it didn't make sense to have health insurance. He fell into the gap between Medicaid for the people who absolutely could not afford health insurance and those of us with employer provided or the incomes to get insurance on the open market. Medicare for All would solve this problem. It would cost roughly what we are spending as a nation right now, mostly through private insurance, which takes 20% off the top. We could make sure that every single person in this country has health care. We'd spend what we're spending now and spend less money over time as we see better long-term health outcomes. That is the solution to this problem, to protect our rural hospitals that are struggling so greatly right now.
Healthcare is a human right, and that absolutely means that Medicare for All is the solution that we need to work towards. And I agree with the other candidates. There are immediate things that we need to do tomorrow to remedy these things, to remedy the effects that our own representative put his name on, that he put his stamp of approval on gutting rural healthcare, potentially closing hospitals in this district. And like we said, when that hospital closes, we know the result. That town will never be the same. And so we see the results of trying to incrementally improve this system. We see what happens if we don't make the bold change that's needed. And so we have to put our money where our mouth is and support Medicare for All. Thank you.
So yes to all of what we've heard before, and bad news. I mean, Washington State Insurance Commissioner Patty Kuderer has recently been holding town halls telling us that insurance companies are requesting 20% plus premium increases for the coming year, because the insurance companies have people looking ahead and seeing that as people drop out of the Medicaid rolls, because they aren't going to be able to comply with the new paperwork requirements starting in 2027, everybody is going to suffer more as those people, instead of being able to get wellness care and regular treatment for minor issues, are going to have to go to fully supported emergency care, which is the most expensive care that exists. And what has our incumbent congressman been doing? I was out in Ritzville for a town hall meeting that was hosted by East Adams County Hospital. And it was 2.5 hours of standing room only audience, very energized with the idea that if that hospital went away, in that case because of some alleged financial shenanigans, that that whole community was going to go down. And somebody asked the board, who you look to for help? And the board member said, well, we've asked Representative Baumgartner. And somebody in the audience hollered out, and what's Baumgartner said? And the board member said, well, we haven't heard back. And the audience went, brrr. And the board member said, oh, but I didn't call him, somebody else did. And maybe they've heard back. And I was, So I went up to the microphone and I introduced myself and I said, I'm challenging Michael Baumgartner for his job because I don't think he's listening to us. And statistically, 70% of those people voted for Michael Baumgartner in 2024. I got a friendly round of applause because this is an issue that matters to everybody, regardless of whether they identify as Democrat, Republican, or Independent.
25 million people have lost their ACA benefits, and all Americans face growing uncertainty about their health care coverage due to federal policy changes and proposed budget cuts scheduled for January under the GOP's Big Beautiful Bill. As a candidate, what concrete, actionable policies do you propose to assure everyone in our community has access to affordable, reliable health care? And specifically, how would you protect essential services like Medicaid and Medicare and reduce the healthcare cost burden of working families while maintaining high-quality care?
And here we are again. Here's just the bottom line of all our healthcare issues. Americans don't need health insurance. What Americans need is health care. If you had a grocery list and I stepped in front of you, hey, I'll get your groceries. Let me have your wallet. Well, first, let me take some to pay me to go in, and then I'm going to amp up the prices to take my cut. And oops, I couldn't get anything on the list. Oh, by the way, you owe me a copay. What? When I talk to my doctors, and being a transplant recipient, I got a few, I ask them this question, and inevitably they say the two things. They say, I'm talking on the phone to a person who's supposed to be a doctor, and maybe it's a guy with heart issues talking to a podiatrist and no longer working in the field, trying to convince them to give my patient this medicine, to pay for it. That's an issue. We don't need them. We don't need them there. And the second issue is that hospitals are across the board overfunded. So we're going to have a Thanksgiving healthcare feast. Oh, can I finish the sentence? Okay. Imagine if every American went to the hospital together. We got what we need and we split the bill. That's health care for all.
The last question was kind of technical around what we're going to do to save the hospitals. This one's a little more global. And yes, we need to work for a rational national health policy. Don't try to say that too fast. A rational national health policy. And that's one that provides coverage for everyone, universal coverage for everyone, that is government funded or government supported. And that's a long way off. But what we can do are the things we talked about before. We can shore up the ACA, we can restore the Medicaid, and we can start working towards it. And a great next step on our way to maybe something that's a single payer would be a public option. Call it Medicare for all who want it. Because a lot of Americans out there are going to push back on the notion of you making me sign up for a federal health care program. I like my health care. I want to keep it. So let's give them the choice. Medicare has 3 to 5% overhead. Commercial insurance, 20 to 25%. Let Medicare compete with those out there. It's a great step towards universal health care. We also need to focus on our system on prevention and well-being, including mental health. We need to focus and reinvest in research. We need to grow the next generation of healthcare providers, and we need to rebuild our social safety net, because so many of the ills in our healthcare system come because we don't have adequate food, housing, and other care. It's called the social determinants of health. It's a big word. It's very important. If you're not familiar with it, please look it up. Thank you.
We have health care in this country. We have the providers, and we're paying for it. I just don't feel that we need private insurance companies sitting between us and our doctors taking 20% off the top. We pay $14,000 per person per year for health care in this country. Our other peer nations, better health outcomes, they're paying less money. Germany, Switzerland, they're paying $10,000 per year for health care. When it comes to health outcomes, our peer nations are countries like Mexico, Hungary, and Qatar, who pay far less than we do. $3,000, $2,500, $1,500 for their health care. Medicare for all, ensuring that all people have access to that preventative and primary medicine that is so important for our long-term health outcomes, would cost roughly what we're paying right now that I talked about. We're already paying it pay about $6 trillion per year, most of that through private insurance. And we would have better long-term health outcomes, which would save our country money in the long run with Medicare for all. It would also help our workers so that and our small businesses, so that small businesses would not be competing with large corporations on health care when they should be competing on wages, hours, and working conditions.
I think there's some good consensus on the stage right now. I like where we're going. I would guarantee that every single one of us in this room has some form of a story about how you experienced our broken healthcare system. Whether it's not being able to see a primary care physician for 6 months, whether it's having an emergency and having no idea what your bill is going to be at the end of it. These are the very real impacts of when we have a for-profit healthcare system that we do today. When we have companies that sit between us and receiving the care that we deserve. Because United Healthcare's denial rate is the highest in the entire industry. And that denial rate is the life-saving difference for people. This is how we get care. And so when some executive makes a decision, when someone sitting at the insurance company is deciding whether you should receive care, that is life or death for some people. And so yes, like the others up here, I absolutely support Medicare for all, and nothing short of that as well. Because yes, a public option is great, but studies have shown that in other countries that adopt a public option in line with an existing private healthcare system and keep the other one standing, the health outcomes are worse and they end up paying more for healthcare. So it's Medicare for all for me. Thank you.
So there's a lot of agreement up here on these issues. As a former national security professional, one of the things that I look at is the fact that the Constitution says the federal government is to provide for the common defense of our nation. And a few years ago, the Department of Defense put out a study that said that over 70% of our nation's youth, people between the ages of 17 and 25, are unfit for basic military service. Either they're physically unwell, or they have a behavioral health issue, they've got a substance abuse issue, or they've got a criminal history that means that they can't go into a military workforce, which means they probably are also going to struggle in a civilian workforce. That means we as a society are failing young people. We spend $5 of federal money on people 65 and older compared to $1 for everybody 18 and younger. So one of the things that we ought to be able to get bipartisan consensus on right away is that there should be Medicaid for everybody from birth to age till their 19th birthday until they can enter the workforce. And we can get to Medicare for all or Medicaid for all eventually. But having that direct flow is a way to make that happen. We have to stop the red tape that Michael Baumgartner voted for, that is an unfunded mandate foisted upon the states that starts in January unless we stop it by flipping the House blue. We can also end Medicare Advantage, which is strangling healthcare providers, and use the money that's currently going into the pockets of insurance companies and instead provide through yet regular Medicare vision and hearing and behavioral health and dental services that are not currently covered by Medicare for some weird 1940-something reason. And restore federal funding for Planned Parenthood, because reproductive health is really important for young people, and we got to do a better job.
In the middle of my son's trial, my mother just went into hospice. Everybody here has a story on healthcare. Fortunately, my parents did well. When my mother was 19 years old, they were able to buy a house, so they were able to actually build some wealth. But that is being drained by the system that we have, which is designed to ensure that every one of us dies a pauper and cannot pass on generational wealth to the future. I want to remind everybody that the Heritage Foundation is who came up with what became the ACA. Now, we have to fix the ACA because what we can't afford to do is put millions of people out of health care while we're waiting for something better. We must fund the systems that we have and work to improve them constantly. That is a constant role of government. Also, do y'all remember your history? Lyndon Johnson went to Independence, Missouri, when he signed the Medicare bill and handed the pen to Harry Truman, who proposed the first national health care system in the late 1940s. It took that long. So we need to be working on that. But what system will I support? I'll support the one that can pass. If it is Medicare for all, I will support it. It is a single care system, I will support it. If it is the NIH like the UK, I will support it. If it's a system like Japan, like Scandinavia or Germany, I will support any system. But like the Heritage Foundation says, it only works if everyone's on it.
Thank you, everyone. We have 4 more questions, so we're nearing the end. Please join me in welcoming Katia Jasmine. Katia is the founder and executive director of Creole Resources, an organizer with Spokane Alliance, and the director of Parkview Early Learning Center. Her work has helped advance human rights and elevate the voices of communities that are too often overlooked. We are grateful to have her here today.
Hi, everyone. My question is on constitutional issues. My first question is, if you win, you'll take an oath to support the Constitution. How would you act to serve as a check on the powers of the executive branch? And I think it goes for David. Anne Marie. No, it's David. Oh, David.
No.
No, he was the last one.
Oh, I did. Thank you.
Well, I already took that oath. When I was 23 years old, like I mentioned in my opening statement, when I started thinking about this run for Congress, I looked up the oath that people joining Congress would take, and it's the exact same oath. So I'm familiar with dealing with it day in and day out and what it means. And the oath to the Constitution really is about an oath to the mission of the United States government, which is outlined in the preamble. It's to perform for a perfect union, which this administration and its congressional enablers are tearing apart. The next line is to establish justice. Does it feel like there's a lot of justice for Bajan's son down there? I don't think so. The next line is to ensure domestic tranquility. Not a lot of that out there, is there? The next line is to provide for the common defense, not offense, not a Department of War, not military adventurism, not imperialistic notions or robbing other countries to line the president's pocket. The next line is to promote the general welfare. And we've been up here all day talking about the one big beautiful bill and how the social safety net is being shredded. And then it comes down to protecting our rights and the liberty, the blessings of liberty for ourselves and for future generations. And I will weigh everything in Congress against that. If this bill advances one of those goals, great. If it takes one of those goals backwards, it's a non-starter. It's a simple criteria on how to vote and how to lead.
As David talked about, I swore an oath to the Constitution as well. I think it's the reason that you see so many veterans running for office this year, because we feel those attacks on the way our democracy is supposed to be working. It feels like we have no accountability to the executive branch because the mechanisms that we have rely on a co-equal branch of government in Congress stepping up and holding them to account. There is no way that we will be able to hold the executive branch to account if we continue to let the current balance of Congress stick, who refuses to exercise their power as a co-equal branch to investigate possible crimes and corruption and input people into the departments that will protect our democracy and our way of life. That's it.
There's certainly a lot of powers and actions that need to be checked right now. That, as Nate talked about, our congressional cabinet is not doing its job. And so, as your congressperson, I would vote to impeach Donald Trump. And I would also vote to impeach other members of his cabinet. Because we have seen the corruption in plain sight. This makes Watergate look like nothing. Trump has benefited hundreds of millions of dollars just on stock trades alone. These are happening in plain sight. I would also support banning congressional stock trading and executive branch stock trading as well. Because we need people who are up there with integrity. This is about holding the powerful accountable and being beholden to the people of this district, not your corporate donors. And so our Congress needs to do their job. Michael Baumgartner, we have no faith in him to do his job anymore. And so let's get him out, let's impeach Trump, and let's start the investigations. Thank you.
I love the way that David Womack puts it, that the mission statement of the federal government is found in the preamble of the U.S. Constitution, and he teased that out beautifully. The job descriptions are found in Articles 1, 2, and 3 of the Constitution. And we speak of them as being co-equal branches, but the first branch, the first article, is the legislature. And the people who wrote the Constitution made that the most powerful branch in a number of ways because they never wanted the head of the executive branch to be able to act like a king. So they put the power of the purse in a different hand. They put that in the Congress rather than in the executive branch, which holds the sword. And I was trying to think, I think between David and Nate and me and Bajan, we've got about 65 going on 70 years of executive branch experience. That's Article 2 experience. What we need is somebody who's going to wield that Article 1 experience in a way to keep the executive in check. That means withholding the money, defunding ICE, defunding out-of-control executive branches that are no longer following the law. That means investigating and impeaching U.S. government officials who are violating the laws, who are using their office for their own personal ends instead of on behalf of the people of the United States. And in the vast federal government, there's just one person, one elected official whose job it is to look after Eastern Washington, and that is our congressional representative. Choose somebody who's got the experience and the prosecutorial chops to get in there and make a difference.
I talked earlier about short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. To check the powers of the executive, which are undoubtedly out of control, we need to be doing some things that are going to be long-term goals, and that includes constitutional amendments. The power of the pardon needs to be checked. We have to have the powers of the executive to abuse the War Powers Act needs to be put into check. These universal actions, which just got overturned for things as silly as putting your name on the Kennedy Center. All of those things are because of the abdication of responsibility of the Congress. They have absolutely handed over their powers to that. And the court has become nothing more than a rubber stamp for this executive. That said, what we also want to look at is what are we going to do on checking this president immediately? And I'm going to say something that's probably going to be unpopular in this room. Do not waste our energies trying to impeach Donald Trump. If you spend that time, and energy. We will not get all the other things we need to get done. But we can impeach people like Blanche. We can impeach Hegseth, and he should be sent to The Hague for war crimes. We can impeach the people that are under him. And this man is not smart enough to do this stuff on his own without these lackeys underneath him. Use the powers of the Congress to actually make the difference.
So I like to look at these kinds of questions in a worst case scenario perspective. And there's not a lot of tools. Every time I open the paper, I see the courts like pulling our American biscuits out of the fire time and time and time again. Tariffs, illegal. Ending birthright citizenship, illegal. The rule of law and our courts, even Trump-appointed judges, are just, man, what is this on my desk? And they're following the law. Now, I'm running as an independent. I used to be a chair, a state committee member, yada, 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 in the Democratic Party. Part of the reason I left, because 8 years ago, we were talking about the blue wave. We were talking about what we are going to do to curtail the president. We talked about codifying abortion. We talked about a lot of stuff. And I say we in the sense of liberals and Democrats, and they didn't do a damn thing to protect us. They sat on their hands. They continued to stuff their pockets with corporate money, and they capitulated. Oh, I got so much. I got one more juicy sentence, but I will get the job done.
Thank you. My next question, Nate, you're the first to answer. Equal rights have come under attack recently. How would you uphold the constitutionality of personal rights and freedom, for example, specifically with regard to free speech, LGBTQ, etc.?
There we go. We already have the laws that make it so you are not allowed to discriminate against somebody for their race, their creed, their religion. We need to make sure that these are enforced and that we have the positions, the government institutions that enforce these laws, judges that uphold these rights and do not allow these different groups to be demonized and attacked. So it is enforcing the laws, enforcing the Constitution, the right to free speech, but none of that works when our voters do not go to the polls and demand it, and our people do not fight for the rights the way that the Spokane 3 did. We need to enforce the laws that we have on the books, because it is already illegal to discriminate against people, and make everybody able to earn a living wage.
So, yeah, the question at hand is about free speech and personal rights, but it also deals with certain groups and certain classes who actively have their rights under attack. And as a member of Congress, we need to call on our Congress members to do better. There's a pretty troubling history of Democrats and Republicans alike throwing certain groups under the bus for political gain. And so if we can't protect trans people, if we can't stand up and do what's right for the communities that are our most vulnerable, how can we consider ourselves universally standing for human rights? We cannot apply these selectively for political gain. And so, as your Congress member, I will represent everyone equally and not throw anyone under the bus for political gain. Thank you.
The so-called restoration amendments to the Constitution following the Civil War, when men and some women from the Oregon and Washington territories went and fought on the side of the Union to end chattel slavery in the United States and to keep the Union whole. There was an amendment to the Constitution that said that everybody should be entitled to equal treatment under the law and that states could not discriminate amongst their own citizens, and that Congress has the power to go in and enforce that. Michael Baumgartner, last time I looked, had pinned to his Twitter feed that he was proud that he'd voted for the so-called Save America Act, which will make it much more difficult for women to vote. Because they may have changed their names at some point. It'll make it much more difficult for indigenous people to vote, because tribal identifications won't qualify as proof of citizenship, of all the terrible ironies. It'll make it much more difficult for naturalized citizens to vote, because the name that was on their original birth certificate may be different than the name that is finally on their naturalization document. The right to vote is one of the most important free speech rights, and that power is to be secured by the states, and Washington State is working hard to do that, and our congressional representatives should too. We also should pass the PRO Act, which give workers the right to assemble no matter what state in the union they live in, because we've got to have rights to free speech and assemble, and everybody, regardless of race, creed, color, or gender, has to have equal rights.
We don't have equal rights in this country, and clearly the legal mechanisms are not there. We know they're not there because the Supreme Court has ruled that the state of Louisiana can simply declare an emergency and change their congressional districts in the middle of an election. The laws, Nate, are not in place. The Constitution has worked because of the better angels of the nature of the men and women who have led this country for the last couple centuries. But we have seen now that that fails, which means we need to put guardrails on those mechanisms so that the Voting Rights Act cannot simply be overturned by a Supreme Court that wants to stack for the Republican Party. That means we have to codify it. It has to be put into law. And where does that start? It starts in Congress. And it has to be going not just for the law of the land, like the Voting Rights Act, it also has to be going to make constitutional amendments so that there are not those powers. And while we're touching on it, there does need to be limits placed onto the Supreme Court of the United States. One of them is you can't take bribes.
Ever been divorced? Good chuckles and not tears. What is spoken or what is written is not always what goes down in practice. So, I agree with Bajan that we need guardrails. We have the perfect framework. We have the skeleton of equal rights, but we need some flesh and some muscle on that, flesh out what those actually mean, and the muscle to enforce it, to have a full body of equal rights that can speak and adjust and move with the people as we grow and we change. But we also have a PR issue. And labor also has a PR issue. Why is better protections, better safety, better wages a hard sell? And no, I don't want a union. I don't want the ability to negotiate with people who will stand by me. And immigration, our rights are kind of the same thing. They're taking our jobs. They're eating dogs and cats. They're programming your children to change their gender. They're rapists and murderers. Remember, they're not bringing their best. Trump's campaign should have ended there. And our answer as liberals are, no, they're not. Look at this statistic. I'm a Marcom executive and expert. We need PR. You know what that means.
Our rights and our freedoms that are enshrined in the Constitution, that's what makes us American. That's what unites us across all the differences that we have in race and gender and political ideology. And we need to protect those zealously. My faith tells me that God loves us all. The Declaration of Independence says we are all created equal. And the 14th Amendment guarantees that right, that we're all equal, treated equal under the law. So specifically, as you're a congressperson, I would support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act that makes voting rights stronger for all of us. Because as has been pointed out, if we can't vote and have free and fair elections, probably the rest of it isn't going to matter much. The other thing I would do is to support the legislation that's already been proposed that extends the non-discrimination in housing, employment, and in lending from races for LGBTQA plus communities. Specific concrete actions I would take.
Okay, for our second to last question, Taylor Birdtail will be presenting on climate change. Taylor is Ni and Cree and serves as the Climate Justice Program Director for the Lands Council. Through a partnership with Gonzaga Climate Institute, her work focuses on improving air quality in overburdened communities and helping Eastern Washington residents better understand how climate change is affecting our region. Please help me welcome back Taylor to the stage.
Hi, Susan. Thanks for letting me be here. Ashley, Knox to Steam, Huma. Ihi ethplakol hi immigration within Haming Peaks Chunam Limlamt, Patricia to Steam Oxquam with Neo Huit Talash Schools. In Haming Yayat Sweetilioli La Top. In Sha Eastnak Silu, he queeked his snack seal, he choked the openings who sespoke, or no, he choked the hutcha cheeks, sespoke the openings with moose, he queeked his go scalu, he out to mascalu Allah, he temhulaptit. He queeked his scalu, lupa to Allah. So, ox culminum, he mich to steam, he told immigration, it kuala, he in temhulau, he seal, he kospil, he seal, he kutanaha, he spukani, he stitchaweh. He with he queeked, he told, he seal scalo, he insel eat. What I said is I wanted to thank Patricia for her work with immigration, and I'm quite worked up over some of the commentary when it came to immigration, and I just wanted to really remind everybody here that My people, the Salish people, the Kalispel, the Coeur d'Alenes, the Kootenays, the Spokane, and the Colville Okanagan people, this is their land. Anybody else on this land is an immigrant. And I just want to keep that in mind. For everybody in the nation, there are over 574 federally recognized tribes on this land. So when we're talking about immigration, come on. Okay, so my question, though, is sustainable energy programs and incentives have been cut by the administration, the current administration. They wanted me to say Trump, but as someone had mentioned in this, there are so many players behind this. In light of this, what policies would you promote to increase the production and safeguarding of clean, green energy?
Great question. My background is in climate change and sustainability, and as someone who's 27 years old, I know that we're going to have to live with the effects of the decisions that have already been made. And so we rapidly need, on a very tangible level, we need to deploy new clean energy, and that includes not cutting existing funding for offshore wind farms that have already in construction. Our administration paid over $3 billion to 2 separate wind farms in an energy crisis to stop them from being built. There's an insane war on clean energy there's this misconception as well that clean energy is not affordable. Right now we are seeing solar and battery backup energy is one of the cheapest forms of energy, going beneath coal and rivaling natural gas. We have the technology solutions at our hands today. And so our federal government needs to rapidly deploy these clean energy technologies. I'll also say, on the front of climate change, we are only at the beginning of it, but we also shouldn't take it as an abstract issue. It is here today. We have community members and neighbors dying in their own homes because they can't afford air conditioning or don't have it in there. And so this is not some abstract issue. This is life or death for some people. And so we need to urgently address this crisis. Thank you.
We could start by restoring the money that was available and was promised to our farmers in this district if they would put sustainable energy systems into their operations. That money was yanked back with Michael Baumgartner's okay by the current administration. So it's not just the president, it's all of his enablers, both in the executive branch as well as in the Congress, who voted to let him do things like cut that funding. We should restore and even expand the climate change research that WSU's agricultural department was doing so that farmers can continue to grow food. Because long after the data farms are gone, we're gonna still have to need to eat. And we wanna do that from local farmers, family farmers, being in business, using sustainable practices as well as having sustainable systems on their farms. We have got to keep investment going on all of the above. American innovation, incentivized and encouraged so that we can invest in things like clean jet fuel so that we can still fly without polluting our skies. Make sure that corporations are not polluting our environment. Continue with the vitrification of the radioactive waste at Hanford so that the downstream effects don't kill off the Walla Walla Valley agriculture. There's a lot of stuff that we need to do to protect our environment, and a blue majority can help make that happen. We have to make that happen.
Once again, since the Industrial Revolution started this problem, now we're going to try and put the genie back in the bottle and answer that question in 90 seconds. So what I'm going to say is, yes, yes, yes. We also want to make sure that we are looking at energy in a holistic way. There's primary, secondary, tertiary effects that we need to be thinking about. The cascading effects, the downstream effects of these things, the long-term benefits of it. Green energy is energy. This is an investment in our future. Also, related to this, I believe that we need to form an AI committee in the Congress. Anyone know Nancy Pelosi never had a computer on her desk. She just had a telephone because she didn't know how to use one. If you take a look at the Congress, it looks like a senior care facility. We have to be putting people that have an understanding of this, which means we need to put a mechanism in there for that, because the amount of energy that AI is sucking up and is going to suck up is tremendous. It's exponentially larger, not just larger. So yes, wind, solar, all these other things. But the other piece of that, to it, AI, the energy consumption. My cousin's an engineer. When we asked about putting solar panels up in our house, she said, just first change your light bulbs. That was 20 years ago. Now we all have these things. But I mean, those are the sort of things we need to be looking at. It's also energy consumption. It's a full circle on the energy problem.
I like Bajan's comment about Congress. I've referred to Congress as a geriatric high school with all the little battles except we suffer. If you know absolutely nothing about sustainability or clean energy, you might have heard of reduce, reuse, and recycle. And consumption, which Bajan brought up, I do a keynote speech. It's called Attitude for Adjustment. It's about changing your perspective. One of the biggest things that we can do to promote production is needing to produce less. So funding R&D to the next best thing, not just current things like wind and solar. It's production for developing more and different ideas. Sustainable businesses make more profit than those that aren't. The lion's share of new investment is in green energy and green businesses. So we need to make sure that we are labor ready for that, and if managed properly, AI will produce 10 to 15% more jobs than it eliminates, but we need to train and prepare to get there. Oh, it should be next time 2 minutes, and I'd be fine.
Yes, we need more green energy, and we need to wean ourselves off fossil fuel. Imagine what that would do for the environment. Imagine the wars that would no longer be fought over fossil fuel. Imagine that the corruption that would evaporate overnight if fossil fuels were not so prevalent, so useful. And that infrastructure that we would build would be a terrific jobs program. I mean, so that would be a great thing as well. I would also support exploring into small nuclear plants. Today's nuclear plants are much safer than they were when we think of 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and those sorts of things. All aircraft carriers, submarines that we have around the world are powered by nuclear, done very, very safely. It's a way for the future. Yes to farmers' research for climate and crops. I would also support the moratorium that's been proposed in Congress on data centers until we figure out how to safely use those so they don't have such a huge impact on our infrastructure, where the cost is not shifted to each of us and the companies pay their own ways. And for those of you who live in the West Plains, I would support federal funding to clean up the PFAS chemicals out there, the forever chemicals that the government required the airport to use, but now refuses to help clean up. To me, that makes no sense at all.
It is undeniable that the globe is getting warmer, which alleviates us from arguing about whether humans cause it or not. We need to start building out our green energy infrastructure, and we do not even need to incentivize renewables at this point because they are cheaper per kilowatt hour than oil and natural gas, maybe not natural gas, but these fossil fuels. Getting off of fossil fuels is a good move for our national security and our economic security. As David said, keep us out of these wars that there is no reason to be in, except that oil executives really like having high oil prices so they can charge us higher prices at the pump. I would like to see investments in our infrastructure, in our hydroelectric dams that produce good, clean energy right here in Eastern Washington, small nuclear reactors, solar, wind, all forms of energy for each place within this country. That is it.
Thank you. I'm a mom, not a young mom. I'm a mom of 2 young children, one soon to be kindergartner and one soon to be 6th grader. And so our final question tonight on gun safety is near and dear to my heart. I would like to welcome Ava Swigart, a senior at Lewis and Clark High School and the founder of Spokane Students for Human Decency. Through her leadership, Ava has helped organize students from across Spokane around the values of justice, inclusion, and civic engagement. Young people are not, there you are. Young people are not the future of our democracy. They are active participants in it today. And Ava, I want to thank you for being here and leading by example. Please welcome.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Kate, for hosting. And thank you, candidates, for volunteering your time to help us learn more about what you believe. But I want to warn you, watch out, because we're coming for your jobs. I'm going to go off script for just 1 second. I spent some time in Central Oregon where I spent some of my formative years. The last year we were there, my freshman year in high school, there was almost a school shooting at one of our local high schools. It ended up happening at a Safeway where 3 people were shot and killed. The only reason it didn't happen on the last day of school at Mountain View High School was because the shooter got impatient. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but thank God he did. So our final question, students across Eastern Washington are growing up practicing active shooter drills and witnessing the effects of gun violence in our schools and our communities. As a candidate for local, state, and national office, what specific pilots or actions would you support to reduce gun violence while ensuring students feel safe and heard and protected in their schools and daily life?
Our willingness to sacrifice our children on the altar of gun worship is one of the most puzzling things about American society today. And having lived in other countries where there is a proud history of hunting, of defense of property and defense of self using firearms, countries like Norway and Australia and New Zealand look at us and they think that we are out of our goddamn minds. Pardon my language. My father grew up in Chattaroy, and his family was poor enough that he got a gun when he was 12, and he used it to hunt to help put extra food on the family table and to give them some variety. And there are still families in Eastern Washington that rely on access to guns to supplement their diets and to protect their homes and their loved ones, because if something goes bump in the night or out in the barn at some random 2 a.m., the nearest law enforcement officer is a 3 or 4 hour drive away. That's true even in Spokane County. But that's not what we're talking about with active school shooters. We're not talking about responsible gun owners with tools fit for purpose, for defense, and to feed their families. We're talking about people who've taken weapons of war and brought them home to use them against themselves and our children. And we need red flag laws. We need to have restrictions on magazines, and we need to have universal background checks so that no matter where you go, if you've committed a firearm crime, if you've committed an act of violence against another person, everybody knows who you are, and you cannot get a gun and harm anybody else with it.
I think Carmela is bringing up a reality that we are in Eastern Washington. If I call the police where I live, it will take 30 to 45 minutes if I can get a call through. Remember the $1 trillion infrastructure bill? Well, I still ain't got no broadband, right? Well, it takes that long for the police to respond. My neighbors are all armed, as are we. Now, that should not be the standard. Red flag laws, waiting periods, Teflon bullets. I mean, I haven't seen a moose in a bulletproof vest yet. We've got to be making a concerted effort away from, and I think you put it well, gun culture. We've got these shootings that are happening that don't happen in very similar countries. What are they doing right? And one of the things they're doing right is they don't have a massive National Rifle Association pushing guns on society, having loopholes where anybody can get guns, and we are not putting safety mechanisms in place to keep our police and our security organizations safe, or our children safe.
Americans are not really divided on this issue. If you look at the poll numbers, the survey numbers, after Sandy Hook, Biden, then VP, was put in charge of creating a gun bill. And it was almost unanimously supported by Americans. We were devastated. No one likes these violent outbursts and deaths. But a filibuster killed it, funded by the NRA. This is a special interest issue that is killing people because they want to sell more guns. And they sell more guns when a Democrat is in office over the fear that they might be taken away. We do have a gun problem. It's a dangerous tool. You remove that tool out of bad situations and more people walk away with their lives. Fact. But behind that gun, those issues, is that we have an anger problem in this country. We have a poverty problem in this country. We have hate, blame, and division problems in this country. These are fueling these kids who stay home and nobody they don't have friends, or, guys online who think they have a right to have sex with a woman, all of these hateful ideas and people struggling constantly. Men don't know what it is to be a man in society anymore. And, you can mock that, but people are struggling with that issue. So, oh, the clock is off. I went so long. Anyway, it's both societal and mechanical in the sense of policy.
So this isn't necessarily about gun control, it's about gun safety. The Second Amendment, in order to provide the states with a well-regulated militia, guarantees the right to bear arms. And that has been broadened over several court decisions over the years to just every American has a right to own a gun. So that's where we are. So how do we make it safe? We make it safe probably like we make automobiles safe. We require training. We require people to take a test. We require licensing. And they renew those things every so often. It's pretty simple. Driving a car when you don't know what you're doing is dangerous for everybody. Owning a gun when you don't know what you're doing is dangerous for everybody. So I support universal background checks, waiting periods, bans on high-capacity magazines, red flag laws, many of the things that have already been mentioned here, because they are common sense gun safety laws. And I will point out that Washington State has many of those things in place. And we have the 11th lowest gun violence statistics in the country. It should be the lowest. We should all be working for that. But we're already doing okay. But we can put those into federal law and make sure our brothers and sister states are doing okay as well.
Like many people here in Eastern Washington, sitting up here at this table, I am a pro-Second Amendment guy. We need realistic regulations around that Second Amendment. Universal background checks and closing of the loopholes, the gun show loophole, the private sales loophole, waiting periods, especially for more aggressive types of weapons, red flag laws, and safe storage laws. But all of that, we could have all of that in place and we would still have gun deaths. Part of our solution has to be a more robust mental health care system in this country, right along with our universal health care system. I was a sophomore in high school at Lewis and Clark when we had an active shooter event. None of those regulations, the background checks, the red flag laws, potentially an unenforceable safe storage law, would have prevented that. But with a more robust mental health care system, we could potentially catch these acts before they happen, using those red flag laws to allow the judges, who we give a lot of power to in this country, to help make our communities safer.
I'm young enough to have grown up practicing active shooter drills, putting desks against an interior classroom door, and imagining the scenario where a shooter walks in and you're fighting for your life and what to do in that circumstance. This is what we are asking our kids to do, our teachers, our educators, instead of passing any form of common sense gun reform. Instead of passing any of the many very great laws that were talked about tonight, we are placing the burden on kids to fight for their lives in the event of an active shooter. And then when it inevitably does happen, we send our thoughts and prayers. Politicians can give their best thoughts and prayers and do nothing to change the reality. And so, yes, like the others up here, I support all of these common sense gun laws that make it more difficult and less accessible for people who are experiencing a mental health crisis, for high-capacity magazines, because it's the right thing to do. Because otherwise, the option is asking our kids to fight for their lives while there's an active shooter in the building. Thank you.
In the interest of time, it's already been about 2 hours and 40 minutes. We are going to forego closing statements. If you don't know where these candidates stand yet, although I believe most of us do, see them afterwards, but please help me in giving a round of applause to our candidates. I've done this. It is not easy, and so thank you all very much for stepping up and being willing to serve. I also want to thank you, our audience, for participating in today's conversation and being involved in the democratic process. And before everyone leaves, I'm going to turn it back over to Sammy and Jeff.
That was great, Kate. Thank you. You hardly had to use your mom voice.
It could have gotten worse.
It could have. All right. We want you all to know how much we appreciate you, how much we appreciate the candidates, how much we appreciate this team of fabulous people that ask questions. We wanted those questions to come from our community where we have people that work in it every day, that they're living it, and they know what's happening, and we wanted those answers to come to you guys mostly, besides us, and to see how accurate our candidates are with them, and I think that we were very successful with that. So thank you, everybody, for that.
Sammy and I are humble and grateful to be the faces of Spokane Indivisible and SURJ for this event today. But the fact is, it couldn't have been pulled off without the dedication and the insight, the raw intelligence and enthusiasm of the committee that put this together. So I'd like to recognize those fantastic people and anybody on the SURJ or Spokane Indivisible election committees, if they could please stand for a round of applause. Thank you so much. It's been a privilege to be associated with you, and it's a privilege for me to give these lovely roses to Kate Tellis, our moderator.
All right, we want to especially thank our question askers who came from far and near. If you don't know, Matthew's anniversary is today, and he gave up his afternoon to be with us, but I hope you've got some big plans for later. All right. So thank you, Ava, fabulous. I'm so glad that you presented that gun question because as far as I know, it hasn't been asked in any of the other candidate debates or forums, so thank you. It was perfectly presented. And thank you, Pat, for being here. You're such a big influence in the immigration, and you do so much work, and we appreciate everything that you do. Thank you. And we've got Katya, thank you. I got to speak to Luke last night, and he was so happy that his sister gets to be here to join us today. So perfect. Thank you so much. And Taylor, it's such a privilege meeting you. Loved that. And all of your perfect words. Very nice. Thanks so much for that. And our last tall, our tall, beautiful one that started us off, Alicia. Oh my gosh. We are so privileged to have this team with us. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much. All right, the candidates are going to be here until 4:30 if any of you want to go visit them. And my last little message to all of you is if anybody in this room that isn't registered to vote, we have that available for you to register. So get there and do that. The rest of you, stay engaged. do lots, keep joining organizations, and don't forget to vote, and make sure your neighbors and your friends are voting too. Yay, thank you guys.
Putting the ballots in the...
Oh, don't forget your ballots. We forgot your, there's baskets as you leave. Drop them in the baskets. Thank you, thank you, thank you.